It's the festive month of December on TWS, and as the year comes to an end, this week in fact was the beginning for some gentlemen of the game. We begin with birthdays. The birthday of the master. No, not our master, but Sir. Why was he known as the master? Well, because the Surrey cricketer is the leading run scorer and century maker in first-class cricket. 61,760 runs with 199 centuries. The impressive season. Attacking dynamism described his earlier years. Post-World War and his health concerns, a safer, more consistent style of play earned him. Around the time that Sir Jack Hobbs was knighted, Hanif Mohammed was playing Test cricket for Pakistan. Speaking of history, we turn the page to the chapter reserved for Australia's iconic skipper, Ricky Ponting, the man at the helm of Australia's golden era from 2004 to 2011. The punter who wore his heart on his sleeve and was without a doubt one of the greatest batsmen produced from down under. On the 19th, Ricky Ponting will be 44. Now, did you know that Graham Smith once described Ricky Ponting as the toughest competitor he had ever played against? Well, do you know this? In our number diary. Now, the number 100 holds a special significance for A.B. de Villiers. After all, he has the fastest ODI 100 to his name. But you and I know that that's not all when it comes to A.B. de Villiers and world records. If he isn't rapidly smashing it out of the park, he's forcing us to rethink the traditional cricket shot. As brutal as he is on the field, he is international cricket's Mr. Nice Guy. And to think that it all began this week in December in 2004 on the 17th, when Mr. 360 made his Test debut. The number 100 plays a role once again in A.B. de Villiers' career, believe it or not. Now, A.B. de Villiers played his 100th Test in his second home, the Chinnaswamy, scoring an 85 on Indian soil. This week from the stash, Boria Majumdar recalls another special innings scored on Indian soil in what was India's first ever Test match at home. So it's time for us to take a breather on TWS. Use this opportunity to send in your tweets. Use that hashtag TWS on SS. I'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to TWS. Wear your helmets, folks. This segment is fast and furious. We begin with the birthday of Joel Garner, one of the most fearsome bowlers the West Indies have ever ODI wickets. He is the only player with more than 100 ODI wickets to average under 20, while his economy rate was just over 3 runs per over. His 5 of Joel Garner's fearsomely fast compatriots would make his international debut this week in December. Malcolm Marshall. At first, Galuru. On the same date, 15th of December, but in 2002, a 20-year-old James Anderson made his international debut. Would he have imagined that he would still be going 16 years later? And that too, as the highest wicket taker in Test cricket amongst fast bowlers. Well, when you get to bowl from an end that is named after you, it means you've achieved something extraordinary. Well, that's it from us this week, but here's a look at what some of you had to say last week. Coming in using the hashtag TWS on SS. Now, next week, which will be our last week in December, will be all about MSD. Until next time. The last week of December in TWS is special because it involves India's mercurial Captain Cool, MSD, from his debut to his retirement from Test cricket, to reliving his most iconic moments. This, the last week of the year, is all about Mahi. But we begin with another World Cup winning wicketkeeper batsman, Syed Kirmani. On the 29th, he will be 69. The last week of December in TWS is special because it involves India's mercurial Captain Cool, MSD, from his debut to his retirement from Test cricket, to reliving his most iconic moments. This, the last week of the year, is all about Mahi. But we begin with another World Cup winning wicketkeeper batsman, Syed Kirmani. On the 29th, he will be 69. Now, Syed Kirmani shared a locker room with India's original Little Master and a small role in Gavaskar's Test 100 of gargantuan proportions. Not useful 50s from Ravi Shastri and Syed Karmani, India would declare on 4:51. We all know that he went on to score 34 Test hundreds. Now we all know Sunil Gavaskar's prowess with the bat, but what about with the ball? Believe it or not. Now when you're going through a rough patch, just remember this week in December in 2004, MS Dhoni ran out for duck in his international debut. Who knew that 3 years later, the long-locked Captain Cool would lead India to the World T20 title, and 4 years after that, the coveted World Cup, undoubtedly as the greatest finisher in the game. Now, what would have happened had he given up after this week in December in 2004? And when he did step aside 10 years later from Test cricket this week in December, he opened the doors for yet another flourishing era in Indian cricket. This week in December and what it means for MSD. And this week, the man with the Midas touch contributes to our number diary. And now let's get some more from the stash with Borya Majumdar. It's time for us to take a breather, but this week it is all about MSD. Share some of your favorite memories using the hashtag TWS on SS. We'll be right back. TWS. So, who is the most famous moustache these days in international cricket? Shikhar Dhawan, yes. Mitch Johnson for a brief period. Or how about match referee David Boone? His mark on Indian soil became a trend of sorts. In the 1987 World Cup, he scored over 400 runs. Speaking of scoring runs in the Indian subcontinent, 12 years ago, a 21-year-old Alistair Cook flew all the way on the 25th. Alistair Cook is regarded as perhaps one of the greatest batsmen that the Three Lions have ever produced. England's runs. For Cook, it ended where and how it all started, against India with a century in 2018, making him the... Since this is the week in December that MS Dhoni made his international debut, we end this last week with two golden moments of his captaincy. Now, Mahi ended a 28-year-old drought for World Cup silverware and fulfilled 1 billion wishes. India became the first team to lift the trophy at home, and an MSD masterstroke ensured that his efforts in the final will be cemented as one of the game's most iconic moments.
Super game of cricket.
The Midas touch continued at the Champions Trophy in 2013. As reigning world champions, India bossed the tournament. As the man who reigned over India, MS Dhoni became the first captain to lift all 3 ICC trophies. If it was his batsmanship that won India the World Cup, it was his glove work that helped them become the champions of champions. MSD, the man who has given us so many memories. I know that you're itching to share, so do so. Use the hashtag TWS on SS. Here is what some of you had to say last week. And that's it from us, the last week in December. We will see you next year on TWS. Until then, have a happy new year.